when it comes to the mind, we can actually play tricks on ourselves by believing what our mind tells us. On today's show, we're going to be looking at how the mind can be altered by the way that we think and the way that we influence it, and also looking at hypnotherapy and other modalities that can help us. Hi, this is Joey Buzzertil, and welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. And today we're going to be speaking to Stuart Wade from the UK, who is going to be talking to us about the mind and talking to us about how the mind can be influenced, I guess, through our thoughts. Stuart, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. And thank you for your patience with my technical issues as I get to learn this new baby of mine that I've got. We're both clinical hypnotherapists, and we know the influence of the mind. But before we go deep into that, do you want to just give the audience just a little bit of an insight about yourself?
Sure thing. So, I have been a martial artist since I was 6 years old, and training and competing in taekwondo and kickboxing and other bits and bobs since then. And through my competitive career, as I was kind of in my mid-teens, I adopted a visualization practice. I don't know where I picked it up from, but that kind of sparked my interest in the mental side of performance and what the mind can do for you. Then I did a degree in applied sport and exercise science, and we covered sports psychology in there. So that gave me a little bit more of an interest as well and an understanding as to what's going on between our ears. And then I, in terms of clinical hypnotherapy, my first experience was as a client, as probably most hypnotherapists can attest to. And that was my first real exposure to, wow, this really works. This is weird, but it works.
And what part of the UK are you from?
So I'm from Doncaster, which is in Yorkshire, but I live in London now. So
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you mind if I ask you if your experience was it about a problem, or was your experience more about something less impacting, like with doing the hypno and learning about visualization? Was it like something? Did you want to try and get through something personally, or was it something else?
Sure. Well, the visualization started purely to help me with my performance in competition. I would do my physical warm-up. I would find somewhere quiet in the arena, and I would either sit down, kneel down, close my eyes, and I would visualize what I wanted to do out there in the tournament. But then later on, when I was the client, it was to overcome some issues with confidence and to boost my confidence up. And it was quite specific in terms of my fitness, because I'd gone through a few tournaments where I'd fatigued, somewhat badly, and it had then affected my results, and I ended up getting beaten by guys that, in my opinion, I shouldn't have been beaten by. It wasn't a skill thing, it was a fitness thing. But even though my physical training and my diet could have been better, no doubt, it was affecting me here. And I would be going into the tournament, even before I'd done anything, thinking, is it going to happen again? Am I going to get fatigued and not be able to perform again? Because it's the worst place in the world to be when somebody's trying to punch and kick you if you're tired and you can't get out of the way or hit them back. So yeah, that was, like I say, later on when I was the client, that was the issue to overcome there. And then a little bit further down the line, I had some personal stuff going on as well. And then some of that sporting stuff with the confidence as well. And I had the luck of winning a competition here in the UK to go and work with Paul McKenna for a day.
Oh, wow.
And he did havening technique with me, which he was releasing his new book on at the time. And so we did that work, and they did a write-up in the Sunday Mirror newspaper over here about it. But I asked him there and then what I should do in terms of qualifications, because I was fully on board with this world by this point. I was fascinated by it, and doing the work with him that day just solidified that. And so he then recommended I do the NLP practitioner course with Dr. Richard Bandler, because he was his mentor, etc., etc. So I did that, and then got qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist later on down the line on another course, and the rest is history.
Wow. I mean, the UK is so different to the way that it's sort of like you're lucky because it's sort of accepted a lot more than it is in Australia. I think in Australia, it's still seen as, yeah, it's odd. And like recently, one of my colleagues got a job working for a football club, and that
Okay.
club won 3 premierships. And so now people are
Wow.
paying attention. So for you, what was the drive to help people? Like, you could use it as an individual thing. It helps with your sport. So where or what is your connection to helping? Like, can you explain how that was born or where that came from?
Hmm. Sure. Well, I think I only started to properly get on board in terms of wanting to help other people through my work as a personal trainer, because that was my first business after graduating from university. I got qualified as a personal trainer and I started helping people with their fitness goals. And it became apparent to me probably within the first year of working in that industry that I could tell someone what to exercise and what to eat until I was blue in the face. But if there was something else, affecting them, whether they told me or not, if they weren't getting the results for whatever reason, there was some mental block there. There was something emotionally going on. And so that then informed me to go a bit deeper in terms of looking at the mental side of coaching, and then a bit more into the hypno side of things. But yeah, I think that's probably where that stemmed from. Just a bit of, probably born out a little bit of frustration as well,
Mm.
because I'm wanting to help these people with their weight loss goals or whatever their training goal was, and something wasn't happening somewhere. So I'm having to research and dig a bit deeper.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You and I have gone through, I was a personal trainer as well. And
Oh
it's like,
wow.
yeah, so like, and then I did massage and then I did the hypno and all that. And it was like, you don't realize you're doing counseling when you're doing personal training.
Mhm.
I didn't,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm not very sporty, so I need you to help me. So how does the mind equate to the performance in your opinion? Like I specialize in anxiety. So, that's quite something that you can sort of, it's a thought, da da da. But when it comes to like, when I look at Tiger Woods and he was being hypnotized at a very young age to like hit the ball into the hole, right? How do you navigate that? How is that different to say a mental health problem?
Hmm. Well, every client is different, and so whatever they are wanting to achieve, we'll try and unpack that and get to the root of what their motivation is for that,
Mhm.
and thereby getting that emotional involvement, as you well know, Joe. That's going to drive things on so much better. But yeah, it is. I was taught on my hypnotherapy course when I was studying about how the mind can affect your physical performance in a sport as well as in business or whatever it might be. And my mentor Carl used the example of Carl Lewis, the American sprinter from the late 80s, early 90s there. And he told us about some study that was done in an if I can talk, in an American university, stumbling over my words, where they had him hooked up to an EMG machine with the electrodes on his quads, on his hamstrings, on his calves, and they asked him to visualize going through a 100-meter race in his head. And he was just sat there, no physical movement. And they studied what happened with the muscles, and every single muscle in his legs fired as they would if he were actually doing it. And
Mm.
so when Carl regaled that story to me, that was like a light bulb moment where I thought, that's what I've been doing in competition all these years then. It's been
Yeah.
firing up my nervous system, ready to go out there and compete. And so, and then obviously studied a little bit more then about the mind and the neurology of it. And yeah, it's
And I heard another study where they had a basketball team play basketball and another team just do what you were saying, and they
Mm,
sweated the same and everything. So it is really quite.
mm.
It's a powerful thing. Like, I want to tell you a quick story about how powerful it is. Like, I remember a man came to see me to quit smoking, and he just found out his wife was pregnant, and he was so desperate to quit that while we were doing the hypno, like I've never seen this before, all the nicotine got released from his body. So his white
Wow.
shirt turned brown, right? And then thinking, oh my God. And he came out of it and he just threw up and he just said, okay, I don't want any more nicotine. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've never seen that before. So, the mind is powerful if we allow it to do certain things. So what do you think? Well, I guess, do you think everyone can do it? Or are there particular people that can do it better? When we're talking about the performance and the believing and all that stuff, do you think that we all have the ability, or are there gifted people? I'm just talking about sport here.
Mm. I do think we all have the ability. I think a bit like conventional hypnotherapy, everybody's on a spectrum of suggestibility. There are some somnambulists out there where you can just go sleep and they'll go, they're away with the fairies. And
That's
then
me.
other people at the opposite end of the spectrum. Yep. I do think that we're all, generally speaking, somewhere in the middle. And I think as long as you're open to the process of it, open to the potential outcomes of it, and if you're doing it on your own, fair enough. Each to their own. Some people feel better just taking that responsibility themselves, but some people would want an external influence, into whether that's a therapist or a coach or whatever, to just facilitate that a little bit, because they might feel better. As long as there's that rapport there and that trust and that bond and that belief in what they're wanting to achieve, I think anybody can do it. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, is that? Do you also believe that that's also possible for anyone to be able to get sporting, like, not perfection, but like if someone wants to improve their sport, that everyone has the ability to do that?
I do think so. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Not. I don't necessarily think everybody's got the potential
Of
to
course.
be an Olympic gold medalist. We do have genetic influences and physical structures and stuff like that. But if you're doing the physical work in terms of the training and the exercise, the strength and conditioning, if your diet is good and all of these things are facilitating your performance, if you're getting enough sleep at night, if you're getting enough recovery, etc., etc., you've got the technical skill as well, there's no reason why anybody can't improve the performance by utilizing their mind a bit better. If you're just sitting on the couch and eating a bag of crisps or something and just visualizing coming first in the Olympics, you might have a bit of a thing on your hands there, but you're laying the foundations in your mind, as long as you then go out and do the physical action.
Yeah. So let's just move the direction a little bit. So this is a men's podcast, mental health podcast. So I always ask people that work in sort of like, this field is what they feel is the main influences for men at the moment and their struggles. Like, COVID is the obvious thing that's going on in the world, but what do you feel men are going through at the moment in regards to their, search for who they are and their transformation?
Mm. Well, it's an interesting time, because I think even outside of the whole pandemic and COVID stuff, I can only speak for what it's like over here, but I would imagine it's probably the same in Australia, where typically men have always just had to grin and bear it, or don't talk about your feelings, just get on with it.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. It's always, you shouldn't express your feelings or your emotions. You should just stuff them down deep inside and just power through.
Yeah.
If
I'm going to add on the there's also the other side in Australia where there's an entitlement. So there's the push it down, but then there's this old school entitlement where men think that they're better than, say, women and all that. So those two things. Does that happen in the UK as well? I guess.
I'm not so sure about the entitlement necessarily. There probably is some of that subconsciously, I would say, and it could be to do with a kind of a paradigm where men maybe subconsciously think, oh, it's a feminine trait to express your feelings or express yourself. So, you shouldn't do that. You should be a man and all that kind, a man
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
this kind of thing. But I think in terms of, and there's so many different movements going on in the world now, we'll not go into all that. But I think it's becoming more socially acceptable for men to then speak out if they're having problems, whether it's an emotional problem or a mental health problem, and those kind of things that traditionally I'll say we've had to push down and hide from the world because of what will society think of me, they'll think of less of me, blah blah blah. I think now it's becoming more accepted, and men are actually going to seek help more
yeah,
as well now, which again, typically, if a guy's driving down the road, doesn't know where to go, they won't ask for directions, that kind of thing, where now it's becoming more acceptable and more guys are actually feeling that they can seek help, and
yeah,
I've had experience of that myself, where I've wanted help, I've needed help, and my pride wouldn't let me,
mm,
because it would almost be like admitting that I was, weak in some aspect of my life, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, like
it's
it's
interesting
it's
time.
it's good. It's exciting, but also like I'm sure it's the same all around the world. But like suicide rates are still high, so men are still. It's like we're at a point here where we know it and we all for it, but there's a little tiny resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I'm all for that, but I don't want to talk about my problems. It's changing. Um, and I know that this is a hard question to answer because it's all open to interpretation. But what do you think masculine toxicity is? Like, what is toxic masculinity in your eyes?
That is a good question. I think it's probably that mistaken belief of being the big strong man and then having to assert your dominance over any situation and disregarding what you might actually be feeling deep down, and
Yeah,
because you don't want others' perception of you to be skewed a certain way, you want to appear as the big man, and whether that's in a social setting, in a business setting, or in a personal relationship, I mean, you're kind of, you feel that you have to live up to some messed up ideology of what a man should be, when actually, if you are just comfortable in your masculinity, you can be that strong man, but you can also admit your vulnerabilities and you can seek help where you need it, instead of just trying to hide behind that mask all the time.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's good talking to you actually, because I'm realizing as we talk, that there are differences between Australia and the UK. Like, I really do believe Australia is very, there's a base around entitlement. There's a lot of like,
Mm,
men believing that it's okay to yell at a woman or to have sexual, to have sex with her if she says no. All those sort of things are sort of they're big things of discussion at the moment in Australia. Especially domestic violence, because
right.
we had a really terrible situation where a really well-known football player broke up with his wife, and so rather than dealing with that emotion, he burnt them. He just killed his family because he didn't know how to deal with the fact that she didn't want him. And so that was a really big opening for us to go, oh my God, as men, are we telling each other to sort of, are we pulling each other up? So
Mm.
what do you think are some of the main reasons why that men come for therapy that you're noticing? Like, what are some of the maybe the top 3 things that you're noticing that men are wanting to work on?
Hmm. Well, anxiety is a big one.
Yeah,
I'm not. It seems to be a bit of a pandemic in itself at the moment. But yeah, oftentimes with me as well, I tend to attract a lot of people for weight loss, um, and as well as the sporting performance side, because of my martial arts background.
yeah,
Um, it seemed, and because I'm I'm quite fit and stuff like that, I think men generally feel more comfortable coming to see me, because if for and it shouldn't be like this, but it probably is. Well, it certainly is from what they've told me. Where if they were going to see a female therapist, they probably wouldn't open up as much, because they see me and they think, oh, he's like me, you
Yeah.
know.
And you've got all that experience that it just makes it makes sense for a man to want to be aligning with a fit man and to think about a fit woman, or to think about so they come in to deal with is it just general anxiety that is happening just to everyone? Like, is that what you're seeing?
It seems to be. Yeah, it seems to be general anxiety in terms of the last year with all the uncertainty. Obviously, it's things like, am I still going to have a job, to go to? How am I going to pay my bills, etc., etc., and all the fun stuff that's come along with COVID.
I know, but you know how lucky you are. You know how lucky you guys are, because you opened everything. I saw online that you had a countdown to the opening of nightclubs. And I'm thinking, you guys are so lucky. Like, so it must be a bit of a relief. Like, do you feel that there is also a pressure for men to be to be good fathers, like, to have that responsibility to be a dad and to pass on the things that we're talking about in a different way? Because I guess if you came from a background where there was an expectation and now you're becoming a father, it's really hard not to be like your own father. Are you noticing that there's a lot of men wanting to be better, I guess?
To be honest, I can't say that I have noticed that. I would hope so, certainly. But speaking from my own experience, I would like to think that when I get there, I'll be able to put my experiences into practice with raising a child, but also then my hypno stuff as well, in terms of knowing how to better communicate and knowing how impressionable, the subconscious mind is, particularly when the child's, up to year dots to 9 years old, and just impress might be a strong word, but influence the right things in them, and not put my fears onto that child. Because I see a lot of that. I've noticed that a little bit recently, and it's quite funny, really, because and it's completely trivial, but my brother and I have always kind of steered away from cheese. In terms of cheese. We would only like eat it on, say, a pizza or a lasagna, something where it was cooked or melted. And I've only in recent times figured it, and we both discussed it, where that's come from my dad, because he would only ever eat cheese melted on a pizza or on lasagna. He would never eat cheese, on its own or on a cheese sandwich or anything. And we've grown up with that influence from him, so we've never tried it. And it's only now that I'm now trying different types of cheese.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, actually, I like this. I've missed out a little bit on this. And it was purely that influence,
Yeah.
So if something as trivial as that can be influenced on your kids, what's some of the bigger stuff that you could be influencing them positively or negatively with? So I think people should be very mindful. Whether they are or not, that's another question.
I think that you sort of covered it earlier by it's the number one thing that I feel that men do without realizing is they tell boys to not cry. So the vulnerability thing, I think, now is becoming more open. And the other thing that I'm like, I don't really know anything a lot about, but I love, is that boys now can play with dolls, or they can do whatever they want to do rather than being pigeonholed and making them, have an issue with what should be or shouldn't be. So that's a good thing. Now, in regards to the therapists, right? Again, this is just a curiosity that I have, and I've just asked other therapists. Do you sort of see that we are in the age of the guru, and so everyone there's all these people that are really authentic, like you've got experience, so you know what you're talking about, versus the people that just want to do it because they think that this is an easy job. They think it's easy to become a therapist, easy money, but they have no idea what they're doing. Are you noticing that there is that in the UK? this whole sort of this push towards a lot of coaches or a lot of people doing, God say a weekend course, 2 days, and they're helping people. What's your sort of take on the gurus out there that are sort of proclaiming themselves as the person to help out everyone?
Yeah, it is interesting. You do see quite a bit of that, particularly online now. And oftentimes in some of the therapy Facebook groups that I'm in, they'll sort of, somebody will post, here's a life coaching course for 2 days that a bunch of teenagers have just passed, and all this kind of thing. And it does seem to be, yeah, it's a little bit like how personal training was when I
You're
got
right.
into it, in terms of you can do a quick course for a weekend, and then you can call yourself a personal trainer. Um, and so, yeah, it does seem like a lot of people are jumping on that bandwagon and trying to just get into it because it's quick and easy, or so they think. Um, and I think the whole social media age isn't helping with that, because so many of the so-called influencers are then, putting some inspirational quote underneath a picture of them wearing next to no clothes in a beautiful location, and all this kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think there is a bit of that, and it's
Yeah.
it's something that people should be careful of.
Yeah. I like, are your friends, do your friends speak to you about them wanting to do it, or do they sort of come to you? Do you find that you're the person that everyone comes to in your friends or family that when they want a problem solved? Because, you're seen as the coach or the person that has some of the answers. Like, how do you, yeah, like, how do you find when your personal friends come to you and want help? How do you sort of handle that, especially the guys?
Well, yeah, in all honesty, like I always kind of pride myself on being a good listener anyway, outside of the work that I do. And I'm naturally quite a quiet person anyway. So I would tend to sit back and just listen, and offer support where I can anyway to my friends and family if they need it. But if they're the good thing with this, me having the experience and the qualifications I have now, is that not only can I listen to them and their issues, I can then offer some practical things that they can do then, as opposed to just lending a sympathetic ear. Um, so yeah, in terms of it, it is a bit less the guys that would come and talk to me, um, more so the female friends I've got, and my family members that are females and stuff. My brother is good with talking to me and stuff like that, but my guy friends not so much. But I think
That's
once
interesting.
they start, then they start to open up.
Yeah, because I would have thought that there's an attraction about you, and that is that you're young, right? And so I'm way older than you, and I know that there is a case. People just assume that therapists are older, and I love that. When I talk about the gurus, I think that the people that are good at what they do, they last, right? Like anything, right?
Absolutely.
So for you, do you find that people believe and there's a credibility there because of your age? I mean, I guess because you've got experience, that comes, right? Or do you have people go, "How old are you? Like, do you know what you're doing?" Like, because how old are you, by the way?
I'm 32. I'll be 33 on Monday, as it
Okay,
happens.
well, you look so much. You look younger. Like I was going
Oh,
to say
thanks.
20.
I had a haircut and a shave yesterday, so that helps.
Yeah. So do you find that to be a good positive thing to be younger rather than to be a bit older? Because it is a new trend that I've noticed within the therapy world. Is that I've been doing this a long time, and I really have noticed that younger guys are doing it, and I love that. I love that energy that they bring.
Yeah, I think it is a good thing, because you do stereotypically think of the therapist as the older man or woman, and I think I do buck that trend a little bit. I mean, I qualified. When did I qualify? I qualified in June 2014, so I was 26,
Wow.
25 even when I first qualified, and there were I think there were around 10 of us on the course, I was the only guy,
Oh,
and everyone else was at least 12 to 15 years older than me.
yeah,
And so that kind of illustrated to me then, like, oh, I'm a little bit uh, outside the box here with how it normally goes. But like you said, that was 7 years ago. Now, yeah, younger people do seem to be getting into it, and it is a good thing because it does open up the avenues of help for more people.
for
If a
sure.
younger person needs help, they might look at the older therapist and think, well, he or she doesn't really resonate with me. And then they see someone a little bit younger, they might think, oh, that person's more nearer my age group, my experience level, etc. And they might feel a bit more rapport with that person, and that again can build then into a proper therapy session. But yeah, it does seem to be trending a bit younger.
Yeah, and also I think that you bring, or people your age bring, I don't know, there's a freshness. There's a guy in Melbourne or in Australia that actually looks very similar to you, and he's got the same sort of credentials, and I can feel there's a vibe about this, the freshness, because you don't bring, I guess, you have experiences that are not jagged or jaded.
Mm-hmm.
Like you come from a personal trainer, you had a
Yeah.
good experience, and then bang, you're doing it. While I came from a trauma, I was in corporate and I had a trauma. So it is interesting. The older therapists normally come from trauma, and the newer ones are coming from this passion to change the world and to bring
Mm-hmm.
influence into the world. So what would be your message to our listeners in regards to maybe the first or second steps that they can take to start change happening?
Mm-hmm. I think what they need to do is to get clear on what they want, and if they can dig a little bit deeper to the reasons why they want it. I think those are the kind of fundamental things for any kind of change.
Yes.
And and sometimes it might even be that the reason why is not necessarily a positive thing, and that if you dig down to that, and you might then think, oh, actually, I don't necessarily want this. It might have been something that's been instilled in you, like we talked about before, from a young age, but then the reasons why might not be a positive thing, and so that will then help with the clarity to shift and figure out what it is that you really want to do. What is your purpose in life? And that whole purpose thing gets thrown around a lot now, but but it's true. If you can just find what makes you happy, what makes you tick and makes you feel the most alive, then that's your starting block from there, and then you can go into affirmations, visualization.
Yeah. The why that you mentioned is so vital. But what would you say to someone like, I know that the UK, and again, sorry if I'm assuming, there is that lad sort of drinking culture, right? And in Australia, we have that
Yeah.
too. So what would you say to the guys that say, I can't, or it's too hard, or because they're sort of caught up in this fake sort of, distraction. And I know that the why is important, but do you have anything that you would say to them in regards to connecting with a change?
It's a tough one, and I think it depends on the individual you're interacting with. If you can be a little bit confrontational maybe with them,
Mm,
or perhaps you use an exercise like the whole 7 why thing. Well, why is that too hard? Oh, because of this. Well, why is that? And try and dig down and get them to open up a little bit more with it. But yeah, you're exactly right though, that it is very much that drinking culture here, and the lads and all that kind of thing. um and it's funny because I've never felt a part of that, because I don't drink, for one thing.
well,
But
that's why you have a perfect body and you're fit and healthy, because
well,
it's aging you, isn't it? And it stops you.
hmm, yeah, absolutely. And like you said there, Joe, it's a fake distraction.
Mm.
Oh, I don't have to deal with that. Get me another beer. And then you'll just forget about the problem, push it down, and artificially forget about it for a little bit, and then just carry on coasting through life. And if people want to do that, that's absolutely fine. I have no issue with anybody doing something that they genuinely want to do. But the thing for me is wasted potential. Like I it,
Yeah.
it I find it frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, if someone has all the potential to do something big, and then they kind of squander that by, like you say, just going to some fake distraction or something. So it's a difficult one, but I think you just have to approach it with the individual you're speaking to.
I think you've answered it really well, because it really is. This is why I love the fact that you've got this young energy, because again, most people look for the conflict, right? Something happens to make them change, but you're coming from a place of it's a waste. Come on, do it now, guys. Don't waste time. And to be honest, that would be one of the things that I don't really live with regrets, but I wish that I knew what I know now when I was 20. I so wish that I knew, because back when I was 20, we didn't have anyone. We didn't have coaches or anything. So it is a fantastic opportunity for you to tap into this younger generation and say, come on, guys, don't waste it. You can actually do and be what you want to be. And I'm excited to see what happens in the next 10 and 20 years, because a lot of people are taking up all this stuff. Do you have hope that there's going to be a big shift in the way that the world operates because of this new uptake?
I do think so. Yeah, I do think so. It certainly does, and that's the good side of social media, where there are a lot of positive messages out there now, and obviously younger generations tend to be on social media a lot, and so that is then programming some success, hopefully, and so yeah, I am hopeful with it. Yeah, as long as we can get done with this COVID business and start getting back to some normality, then
and as long as they stop wanting to be in Australia, the scary thing is the number one job for young men is to be famous. Like, that's the number one job. I know, it's so scary to think that firemen, doctors, teachers, they've all gone now. I want to be famous. So the last question, which again I didn't put down, but you're young, so I need to ask: what do you think are the main issues with men and sex in 2021? Like, because of the Me Too movement and because of the confusion with consent and all that sort of stuff, where do you think men where do they lay in regards to what they understand their role to be when it comes to the evolution of equality and sex? That's hard.
That's quite a hard question, but I think it's a tricky time in that respect for men, and I'll use the example of a conversation that a friend of mine and I kind of have kept having through the last year, and where he puts it a little bit more bluntly than perhaps I would, but he would say to me, like, don't you feel bad being a straight white man now? Because everything in the mainstream media, well, not everything, but a lot of things, targeting the straight white man as being a bad person or whatever it might be, and it can be in multiple arenas, whether it is sex or racism, you name it. And my response to him was always, well, no, I don't feel bad, because I feel that I'm a genuine person. There's going to be bad apples in every bunch, and unfortunately they make a lot of noise, and the mainstream media jumps on that, and oh, look at these bad people doing all this. But I do think it is difficult, because, and to use him as the example again, he's always been very sociable, very chatty, and he would always, when he was single, he would always strike up a conversation with a woman, no problem, and wherever they were, bar, supermarket, whatever. Where now he's hesitant. I mean, to be fair, he's in a relationship now, so he's not doing that anyway. But before that, he's hesitant now, because he doesn't want to come across as a predator or something like that, because that's been pumped out there into public consciousness so much. So I do think it's tricky.
I totally agree. And someone actually said, I had another guest who we talked about this, and he said exactly the same as you. He doesn't feel bad because, and your answer was beautiful because it's like you're basing it on your values and your worth. But he said, I didn't ask to be born as a white man, right? So I am a white man. So there's things that I automatically have, but it also comes back to my upbringing and, knowing that, and that's a big factor is, are parents teaching their sons those values? Because, one of the things in Australia that was really interesting was that there's a culture at the moment about rape culture, right? And both boys and girls in that 16-year-old age group, they both answered that they thought rape was with a stranger. They didn't realize that you could be raped by someone you know. Right. So, so there's so much stuff that we think that they know. And so I think we need to watch this space. I think there's going to be, like you said, a big shift, but we have to go through the uncomfort first in a way, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. And anything outside of the comfort zone is going to be uncomfortable to start with, isn't it? So yeah, there's some bit of turbulence coming, but it'll be worth it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, just before we finish, like in the UK, are lads respectful, the majority, or are they a bit naughty? Like again, it's just an opinion. Like, is there a sort of alliance coming in where they're becoming more understanding, or is there still that line between them trying to get away with stuff?
I think that it is becoming better. I think there's, like I said before, there's still lads who will do whatever they want and stuff like that, and but I do think it is getting better. And that is something good that's come out of certain events that have happened in the news over here. Like recently, in recent months, there was a girl similar sort of age to me who disappeared on her walk home in London, and they then found a body, and it turns out she was abducted and killed by some police officers, and it's horrific. Yeah, but things like that certainly are helping in terms of making men aware of, like, don't do something stupid, have a bit more about you. And it's just unfortunate that it takes something tragic like that to happen. But as adults, that's how we learn, isn't it? Through tragedy and stuff like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. But, I can't believe that the police, that's, that sort of fries my brain when I think about those things that are not normal, and then you hear that's what happened. It was a massive thing over here. Have you been to Australia before? I haven't been, no, but it's on the list. My parents were there a few years ago and they loved it. So yeah, you need to come. Stuart, thank you so much for your time, and I really am excited that you represent a new sort of energy into the men's health and all that, because you're coming from a different perspective and you bring a vibrancy. So again, thank you for sharing your insights and sharing everything. And I'm going to attach all the links about you so people can find you if they want to ask any questions. Is that okay? That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, buddy. So you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. The podcast is out on Mondays, and don't forget Retro Thursdays. We play old podcasts so you can always catch up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and we'll catch you all next week, guys. See you soon. Bye.